Welcome to Dirt Road Discussions, the podcast where we're all about agriculture all the time, broadcasting from the Idaho Farm Bureau Federation headquarters. We introduce you to people from all over the country who are keeping agriculture growing strong. Whether you're a seasoned farmer or just someone curious about where your food comes from, you're in the right place. So let's take a journey down the dirt road.
Hey friends, and welcome to the podcast that is always productive, Dirt Road Discussions. I'm your host, Cam Hammond. My good friend Ott Clark is the co-host of the DRD podcast. Ott, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm very good.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah. And you?
Fantastic.
Good.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That sounds good.
Oh yeah. Another great day on the dirt road here. Ott, I have a question though. Have you been to any good meetings lately?
Oh, good meetings.
Bet. That's a heck of a question right there.
Yeah.
A good meeting.
I don't want to name drop, but one of our coworkers, a young lady named Kylie Yuri, just had a baby. So I'm covering some of her meetings and doing great things over in Southeast Idaho on the Farm Bureau side.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Productive meeting then?
You bet.
Went well?
You bet. I love a good meeting. I love a good meeting.
A good meeting.
Yeah.
Good productive meeting,
Yeah.
right? Okay, we're going to touch on that a little bit more here in a minute. But to all you dirt roadies out there, thanks so much for spending some time with us. Here on the Dirt Road Discussions podcast, we talk about agriculture, advocacy, and everything in between. Straight from the field to bring you conversations that matter. So, Ott, I love a good meeting too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your civic engagement though, in your community.
Yes, let's.
Are you going to meetings in your community, and are you involved in any local boards?
The Farm Bureau keeps us fairly busy attending extra meetings. So I am not super active in my local community.
Okay.
I'm active across the state of Idaho with the Farm Bureau.
Okay. But there could be room for future opportunities, though,
You bet.
in that
Yeah,
area.
you got to get active.
Absolutely.
I'll be there someday.
So I just started being involved with a local board that promotes youth sports in my area.
Oh, clearly.
And that's been a lot of fun. So I think that, just like you said, getting involved, playing your part in your community is super important. But here's the thing. Some of those meetings, though, those can be unproductive at times. But they are important because that's where those decisions get made that affect your land, your operation, and your road access, your water,
Your
especially
kids'
in
baseball
agriculture.
team.
Yeah, family, ag, sometimes even your sanity,
Oh, you
right?
bet.
So today we're going to be talking about county meetings, why they matter, why showing up matters even more, and how a room full of a handful of people can quietly shape the future of agriculture and rural communities. So whether you're running cows, you're growing crops, or just trying to keep the dust down on your road, if you're not in the room, then someone else is going to be, and they're going to be making those decisions. So I've been thinking about this in preparation for the meeting or for the episode today, and I thought we should play some hot shots.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so here's how it's going to go. You know, I've been a little rough on you the past little bit, and I apologize about that. So these questions are going to be a little bit easier.
Oh, I don't like the sounds of this.
We're going to be talking about meetings and county planning and things like that when it comes to this quiz here.
Okay.
So, all right, so question one. Which of these, we got multiple choice here, which of these is most likely decided at a county planning meeting?
Okay.
Okay. So we've got A, when calves should be weaned.
Okay.
B, zoning and land use designations.
Ooh, that one sounds promising.
C, the price of hay.
Ooh, no.
And D, how early chores start.
I feel like I'm going to go with my gut, and B, the zoning one is probably where I'm going to bet my money.
You are correct.
Okay,
I
good.
told you it was going to be easy.
Oh,
yeah.
thank goodness.
Those meetings, like I said, affect operations, permits, infrastructure. Those meetings are important. So, okay, question two. Which phrase best describes a comprehensive plan?
Okay.
All right. So we've got a wish list for developers,
Okay.
a map that never changes,
Mm.
a long-term vision for how land will be used in the county,
You bet.
and then something that no one actually ever reads.
Ooh, I'm going to lean towards C, but D also sounds viable.
Yeah. It is C.
Okay.
It is C, correct. Yeah. A long-term vision, right? And I'm sure I've never read my county's comprehensive plan. I'm sure many people haven't.
I'm sure you should, though.
Probably should. Okay, let's go one more here. All right, who has the biggest influence on local land use decisions?
Okay.
All right, so we've got state agencies,
Okay.
federal government, county planners and commissioners, or the people who show up and participate.
Ooh, I was going to say C, but now I'm leaning towards D on this one.
You got it. The people who show up
Okay.
and give their input.
Yeah,
So,
you got to be there.
great job. That was pretty easy, right?
Cameron, I loved this one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
did
I needed
great.
a win in my life. I appreciate it.
Looking out for you, Odd. So if you got most of those right, congratulations. You're officially qualified to sit through a planning meeting. If you didn't, that's okay. But that's exactly why today's conversation matters, because land use planning isn't just paperwork. It shapes agriculture, ranching, and rural communities every single day. So listen up here as we share our plans with you on Dirt Road Discussions, where every bump tells a story. So our guest today wears two hats, and neither one of them is just for show. She serves as the county planning director for Owyhee County in the state of Idaho, and she helps guide land use decisions that impact communities, infrastructure, and growth. But when the meetings are over and the maps are all rolled up, she's also a rancher. She manages land, livestock, and understands the same challenges facing producers across the state. And that person is Mary Huff. Mary, we talked about you a little bit there, but thanks so much for joining us here on Dirt Road Discussions. And how are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, the pleasure is ours. We're excited to dig into this exciting topic with you. But real quick, I talked about you briefly and what you do, your two hats, but what else do our listeners need to know about you?
Just been at Owyhee County for 20 years, a place and people that we love. We are ranchers there. Been with the county as the planning director for 20 years. Our daughter will be fourth generation on the same family ranch. And I think that's it.
Awesome. Good deal.
Okay.
We'll kick it over.
I'd love to kickstart this. County, your position there, 20 years.
Yes.
How has everything changed in the last 20 years? Just that's a pretty good a couple decades of you, and I know that Boise has grown a lot in those last couple decades.
You're right. So in 2006 is when I started there. We were heading into 2008, and the market was crazy. Everything was at the top of the market, and everybody was speculating and buying. And we saw a crash shortly after that, and a lot of people ended up upside down in developments. So that was the beginning of my 20 years, is a major crash after 2008. As the Treasure Valley in Idaho has grown, Owyhee County, even though we're remote, has seen and felt a lot of that pressure. And a lot of that comes from people within the Treasure Valley trying to reclaim a little bit of the Idaho they used to know and wanting to move a little bit further out. And then our people see that and they want to move a little bit further out. And I don't think it's uncommon for rural communities to see that kind of concentric circle of people trying to reclaim a little bit of the slower pace and open spaces as development comes in and pressures people out. So I would say that's the biggest change. And we still are in that pattern right now of seeing that continual growth. I mean, it really isn't letting up at all. And our housing market sees that. And even our demographics in Idaho and in rural communities is changing to people that that they haven't been there for generations. And maybe they don't have that same love of and tie to the land like a lot of farming and ranching families do.
Yeah. So, Mary, we've touched on our podcast before just about the growth happening in the Treasure Valley, of course, but maybe not as many people know about Owyhee County. Could you tell us more about your county, population, what's going on there? Because it's a pretty big county.
It's huge. Yes.
It's a big county, but population-wise, maybe not as much.
13,000,
Okay.
Roughly, just under at the last census. So, very remote. It goes down to Nevada and Oregon, so we're right at the very southwest corner of the state. We are about 83% state and federal land. And we just have a lot of times people will say we are the playground of the Treasure Valley. On the weekends, we have a huge influx of people coming to recreate. We see that in every season of the year for the different things that the public lands have to offer. And, we don't have the same, we're just kind of a poor rural county. We don't have the tax base that more populated areas have. So that's always a challenge, even just for services of the county trying to fill in the gap for whether that's our emergency services or sheriff's department, even just school buses running out further to pick up kids, which ties in also to that development of just trying to keep those services as efficient and compact as we can, because every mile, right, increases that cost. And so, but it's a neat place. There are so many people that have been in Owyhee County for generations, and the history and heritage of that place is deep. And people are very, there's just a love for the ranching and mining histories and the settlers that came there and put irrigation in, and the places that they decided to settle. So just neat, rugged individualist, but salt of the earth people. Yeah.
Cool.
It's a lovely place, but you mentioned it's full, right? There's nobody else that needs to move out there, correct?
We had to put up the closed sign. We just don't have any room left.
Yeah. As your position as a planner, how has being a rancher affected some of the decisions that you make and the way that you see the planning process?
I guess first and foremost is just understanding that land has to work for the producer. And that is twofold. That's, most of the time they're not looking at decisions just for today. We are looking at the viability of that farm or ranch for the next generations and what the generations before us did and hopefully what we're doing for the next generation. So understanding that it has to work for them. The flip side of that is understanding that it has to work from them from development coming in. And so those land use zones are there, one, as a planning tool for the community and who we have decided that we want to be through our citizen input, because you're right, it's the people that show up that form those plans and direct the policy of the county. We plan for the citizens and with the citizens. So in many cases, and every county is a little bit different, but when we have an agricultural zone, that helps keep development from coming in and pushing those producers out. So just understanding that each one of those zones has a designated purpose. We wouldn't think of putting a feedlot in our residential areas, and likewise subdivisions in our agricultural areas cause similar conflicts for producers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe you could just expand more into zoning and what that looks like, because I'm not as familiar with that. I'm sure our listeners maybe aren't as well, but touch on zoning and exactly, because it's got to be compatible when you zone. So
in your opening question, comprehensive plan, you're absolutely right. It's a long-term vision for who we want to be. It's a guiding document, kind of aspirational goals. And then, and that is always should be developed with a lot of citizen input and who the citizens of that place say they want to be. They're long-range plans. In more populated areas, maybe those go for 10 years, and some, it wouldn't be uncommon for a comprehensive plan to be in place for about 20 years. It's really a long-range plan. Once you have that plan set, Idaho law, the Local Land Use Planning Act, which is what governs all land use within Idaho, requires that you first have the comprehensive plan before you can adopt zones. So then you come up with your zoning designations and zoning ordinances. So the designations are chunks of land that may have commercial, residential, agricultural, multi-use, historic zoning designation, and that puts a little colored square on a map. Mm-hmm. And then you have the zoning ordinances that go along with that of what is allowed by right within those zones, what may be conditional. You have to get a special use permit or a conditional use permit, or some uses may be outright prohibited in a particular zone. And every county or city should have that comprehensive plan available for you to review and those zoning maps and zoning ordinances. So so that those are open and available for all citizens to see in advance, that we're not making those rules up on the fly.
Yeah.
They're transparent for everyone to see, whether that's developers or landowners within the county.
You mentioned anybody can go and find these documents, the plans that are out there. How can agriculturalists use these documents to help in their planning for the future? Like, hey, this ag land is going to stay ag land, and my neighbor isn't going to be able to, put in a subdivision right next to me, without there being some big changes to this document, to the plan for the future.
I wish it was that simple. They can surely use those plans to understand the areas that we have zoned for agriculture or residential. Unfortunately, in a lot of jurisdictions, in their agricultural zones, they also allow housing. And sometimes that's housing on a minimum lot size. And some areas, that's where I just said it's different in every jurisdiction. And in a lot of areas, I think we're seeing pressure, development pressure, and I'll almost say maybe big money from out of state that's wielding a lot of power and influence. And people often see agricultural lands as lands that are waiting for something to come. They're waiting for development to get there. In Idaho, I think Chanel at the Governor's Summit was saying, I think it's $26 billion a year that agriculture is putting into our economy. It's a powerhouse, right? Our ag lands are an economic powerhouse. They're not waiting for something to get there to rescue them from their desolation, right? Environmental and ecologically, they're providing benefits and open space, and just for health and mental health and welfare of people who come to recreate in these open spaces and get away from more populated areas. So back to your question, how those documents should guide the development. And producers, if they want to ensure that, one, not only show up to the meetings, but get on those boards and commissions. Volunteer for your planning and zoning commission, or run for county commissioner or city council. That's traditionally really hard. And we see a lot of farmers and ranchers who just don't have the time or resources or employees to get off the ranch to get involved. And I understand that. In our family, my husband's not that guy. I mean, he's been the cattlemen's president for his term, but generally he's not being on boards and commissions. But he always makes time and is grateful that I do those things, or a lot of the wives kind of step in and fill that role. But I'd say show up to the meetings, get involved, and let your elected officials and county planning and zoning commissioners know that that's important. Because oftentimes when people don't show up, there's the assumption that I guess everybody's okay with it. And it's not really, maybe they're just too busy to show up right now.
Too busy to show up to a meeting, but you can always make a phone call. You can always reach out to one of those individuals and say, hey, this is important to me. And I think that we all think that we're, I said it earlier, I'm too busy with all my Farm Bureau stuff, but you can always take a little bit of time and reach out to those individuals that are making decisions. And I encourage people to always take part in the process.
There is, once you're dealing with property rights, so if a citizen has a development application in, it goes to what's called quasi-judicial. Those planning and zoning commissioners or county commissioners are now acting in like a judge. So if you were going to court, you can't call the judge and tell them your side of the story outside of the public hearing. So the transparency and openness of the process is very important, but it does have to happen in the public meeting so everyone else gets to hear. So sometimes there are instances where a planning and zoning commissioner or a county commissioner may say, hey, I can't talk to you about this off the record. Please come to the meeting. So a lot of that really, you can put in written comments, but a lot of that does have to happen in the open session and open meeting and subject to open meeting laws. And that helps build the trust of citizens when they know that, maybe the developer or whoever, isn't calling and making sure a decision's happening, behind the scenes. So,
yeah.
The more you know.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking about that. I feel like not even that long ago, right? Your farmer, your rancher, they were the ones that the county commissioners, they were on the school board, they were doing all of this other civic responsibility type of endeavors in addition to farming and ranching.
That's right.
But have you noticed a decline in people in agriculture and getting involved in those areas? And if so, what's your sales pitch to invite them to get involved a little bit more?
I think they're still doing a pretty good job of it. My husband's uncle, or my uncle-in-law, was county commissioner, I think, for about 12 or 14 years. So doing both of those roles, it does take a lot of time and dedication away. But again, for generations here, my husband's family has always seen the importance of getting involved. For our Planning and Zoning Commission, we have ranchers, an ag extension agent, a farmer. Ours is well represented that way. And I think in a lot of rural communities, they probably are. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of developers on planning commissions as well. And so probably each of those, out of just self-preservation for what their interest is, I think those farmers and ranchers are still there because they understand the pressures that are coming, and the developers are there because they understand the pressure that's coming. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes farmers and ranchers think they're not qualified or that they aren't good at public speaking, but that's the people we need on those boards and commissions. Just the real conversations, people who are willing to just speak up, speak their mind, and let the chips fall where they may with those other commissioners. So when you're on a planning and zoning commission, you act as a whole body, right? So without the others, you're just a citizen. But when you're acting in your official capacity, majority rules, right? So however the vote comes out is how the vote lands. And we often see our commission does not always agree, and that's a good, healthy thing. It's a representative of our citizenry that, it's not just a group think and everybody's nodding their heads, but nobody walks away mad. And we don't need to walk away from these things mad. There's different opinions, and that's all right. But it doesn't need to cause fights, or I just see a lack of civility a lot in some of these issues, not just land use, kind of the climate of our society right now.
Yeah.
But intelligent debate is a good and healthy thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just anecdotally, I heard something pretty interesting, and this is just from a state legislature perspective. So I think it was 20 years ago, 33% of our state legislators had some tie to agriculture, to production ag. And then 10 years ago, it was 23%. Today, it's 13%. And so that keeps declining. And so if that forecast tends to pan out, 10 years from now, 3% of our elected officials will have a tie to production ag, which is kind of scary because those ag issues are important.
They are very important.
They need to be understood in a way that's going to be beneficial to those in ag, and those people without those backgrounds, it's going to be harder for them to grasp some of those things. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, but it sounds like in those rural communities, though, they're still definitely being represented as far as farmers and ranchers getting involved. So
I think that's a gut check. When I go to the Idaho Association of Counties meeting, a lot of those commissioners there have some ties to ag.
Good.
But maybe that still is getting down to that 1% of maybe 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 5 is. But I know a couple of guys who have some membership that they could talk to about that. I think I think that is really important, and I don't know what Farm Bureau could do about that, of encouraging folks to get involved. Or from Owyhee County, we have Tim Lowry and Ted Blackstock. I mean, those guys are getting it done, right? Mm-hmm. And they understand ag, and they show up to the Farm Bureau members and are great, productive Farm Bureau members.
Yeah, you bet.
A shameless plug from the Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau, we put on, candidate classes, campaign school. Yeah. We encourage our members all the time. Like, don't stop at the Farm Bureau. Go lead the state, lead the nation. And I think over the last few years, we've lost a couple state board members to the Idaho legislature, which is amazing because we know that they're going to work on behalf of Idaho farmers and ranchers around the state to make sure that they're protected. And I mean, we do the same thing in county commissioners. We lose board members all the time to different county commission seats, and it's a great thing. We love that the Farm Bureau is teaching leadership, and that leadership, graduates them out of the Farm Bureau for a few years where they can be on those other be in those other organizations or elected seats, and hopefully be able to lead. And we'll take them back in a couple years when they're done.
When they've gone and made a great impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point, Ott. So,
I have a question, and we were talking about it earlier. You mentioned property rights. If I have 160 acres and I say, I want to retire, I want to move to Cabo, I'm going to sell this to the highest bidder and get out of town. And you were talking about, well, we can't just put a feedlot in the middle of downtown, and we also don't want the highest concentration of subdivisions in the middle of a field. Can you kind of talk about maybe not your view, but why that doesn't work when you're talking about city plan or, the planning and zoning for a county?
Yeah. Just even trying to move equipment on roads, let alone putting subdivisions now in the middle of working landscapes. We have, I'll say in Murphy, I told you a population about 100. Just got a call last night. Hey, a truck ran off the road, went through the fence. Do you guys have cows in that pasture? But the day before that, right in that same area, and I thought it was going to be the same call, got a call from the sheriff's department saying, hey, somebody in the little subdivision, it was just desert ground. Somebody in the subdivision, your cows got in their yard. They kicked them back out, but the fence is no good. Well, it's in a open range area. When we see development move into these areas, they don't quite understand that it's their responsibility to fence out cattle that are on the range. And every year when we go out to our winter range, which is down around Murphy, which is a more populated area, we have those issues that come up. And that landowner's always calling us to come fix that fence. And it would be endless if we had to fix all of that fence. So that's one of the very common issues that we see when we see subdivisions go into working landscapes. I'm sure you guys have heard the stories of animals harassing cattle, or for some of the farmers, which isn't our thing, but when those farmers are growing food commodities, if the dogs get into those fields, I think it's one of the onion producers was saying they could have to kind of condemn that whole field. So just incompatibilities like that when you see more densities coming into those areas versus agricultural housing that we've historically seen in some of these areas that are farm and ranch workers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the viewpoint of, hey, you're being part of the rural lifestyle if you move out there, but that means you have some extra responsibilities as someone out there. Open range, they've got to understand that this area belongs to the ranchers, in a way, and it's part of their job is to make sure that they keep the cows out of their property rather than, it's your job to keep it in your property. It's a very strange thing to try to describe to someone that doesn't understand the open range.
Right.
Real fast, so Mary, you mentioned Murphy. Tell us about beautiful Murphy, Idaho, because I didn't heard of Murphy prior to today. So
it's very small. We have an airstrip there.
Okay.
The county seat originally was in, I think, Ruby City, then Silver City, or anyway, it came down from Silver City. But Silver City used to be the county seat. And then after the gold rush, they moved it down to Murphy. And that building is on the National Historic Register. Cool. Pretty neat architecture there. But not a whole lot there. It's centrally located because, we go down to the Three Creek area, Jarbidge, and then all the way down to Jordan Valley, South Mountain area. So it is centrally located, but it's not very populated.
100 people, right? So county seat for Owyhee County, and there is a parking meter in there in case parking gets a little too crazy.
That's right. There is a parking meter. Or if you just want upfront parking, if you don't want to walk, you can take the front spot. People park there all the time. I think you get 20 minutes for a nickel.
It's a heck of a deal.
They raised $18 for the local museum, correct?
That's right.
I feel like we're burying the lead there.
Yeah,
It's
true.
a great money maker for the local community.
Every dollar, every cent matters.
You
So,
bet.
yeah. Okay. Just thought I'd ask about Murphy because I had no idea. So very cool. So you mentioned earlier, Mary, about how your county is kind of the playground for the Treasure Valley, right? So you've got people coming. You've got a lot of other people with different interests maybe coming, and then you've got your original people who've settled there, your ag people. And I'm sure that oftentimes there can be some tension between those different groups. So, as a county planner, what does good planning look like to you, and how do you help resolve some of those issues that come naturally from that growth and from the people that have been there forever?
Well, good planning, one, will always be something that focuses on the long-term outcomes rather than short-term pressures that we're seeing, right, that change with the market and with the times from year to year, that we're in it for the long game when you're planning your community for sustainable, healthy, thriving communities, whether that's agriculture or whether that's helping support some of our small cities so that they can be healthy communities as well and house people. But the tensions definitely do arise. When we have the public land, local land use planning does not control public land. So projects, as we see geothermal and solar and wind projects being proposed on federal lands, planning and zoning doesn't have a say there. And so in that way, there are people that come out to use the public lands, and that creates a lot of trespass issues, things like that. They think it's the Wild West, and nobody's really out there not understanding that the producers really are there. You know, I mean, we're on that land all the time, even though it's wide open spaces, we travel that. So from a land use perspective, we don't, in that way, have a lot of influence. County sheriff would deal more with some of those tensions that arise with all of we have rock hounds and equestrian riders, dirt bike riders, hunters, even hikers and outdoor enthusiasts that come out there. So when you ask about being the playground to it, that's not by design. It's just public lands that people utilize. Certainly an issue, like I said, for services and us being able to, for search and rescue and emergency services creates some issues. But from land use planning, not really.
Not as much.
And so I'll just say, go back to, for those private lands, which we have not many, we're about 17% private land. Like I said, being in it for the long game and not ebbing and flowing with every new big idea that comes along, that we've set our vision out for who we want to be. We want to honor and respect the history and heritage of that place while also, allowing and accommodating for growth within our cities. And we've got the Snake River that runs through there. The riverfront lots are very desirable, and we're seeing some development come in that way. So it's not about stopping all growth, but we are a small, rural, poor community, and we have planned very intentionally where we can handle the growth and where we can best service that without being a drain on our taxpayers to run services further out than they need to go. So I think it's just, to me, it always comes down to being very intentional about who we are, respecting who our citizens have said they want to be, and finding that balance between all of the land use zones and development pressure and preservation.
Yeah. So, Mary, we haven't even touched on your family's operation. Could you just tell us more about how that got started?
It's a cow-calf operation. Like I said, my daughter's 4th generation, building her own herd there. It keeps us busy. So my husband's family, his grandfather and his brothers were in the war, and they were sending money home and asking them to find some farm ground and buy that up so they could come home to it. And that's how that all got started in the 40s. And we've been there ever since and continued to just piece more of that ground together. And about 4 years ago, had the opportunity to buy a neighboring ranch when they decided they were going to move out. So that's pieced that together really well, too.
Wow. Good deal. Yeah. So, Mary, when we're talking about planners and elected officials and community members who want to support development, but they still want to respect the rights of agricultural individuals and property rights, what are a few key things for them to remember? Just what approach do you think is right or is essential to make sure that is right, that it all works well together?
Yeah. I think going back to finding that balance, that the thing that elected leaders can do best is being open and transparent and getting citizen input, making those decisions in the open so that it's not shrouded in secrecy of how we got here or whose project gets approved or doesn't. We're not there to pick winners and losers. We're there, again, for that long game of planning great communities. So the best thing they can do is apply all of those land use and zoning regulations consistently and fairly across the board, whether you've been there for generations or you're brand new. The rules apply equally. And then just being transparent and getting people to the table, having opportunities for citizens' input even when they can't show up to the meetings. Perhaps that's through surveys or going out to senior centers to get information from people where they work and play and spend their time. So citizen involvement, being fair and open and honest always, and doing the will of the people is the best thing that they can do. And then as far as balancing preservation and development is just finding that balance and being intentional about planning where we as a county can economically support those services and where we have water and infrastructure and roads and where the school buses and all of our other public services can get to efficiently without being a drain on taxpayers.
Great. Yeah.
Well said. Mary, on the Dirt Road Discussion Podcast, we like to look down the road. My question for you is, what do you hope for your daughter out in Owyhee County, in 20 years?
Yeah, I hope that she can continue on the legacy that my husband's family has done and steward that land and just continue to make it better and to have a thriving cow-calf operation that she can pass on to her kids for generations to come. I think that for the next generation.
Well, once again, we've been joined by Mary Huff. Mary is the County Planning Director for Owyhee County in southwestern Idaho and also is a rancher. So, Mary, we have really enjoyed visiting with you today. We've learned a ton, and thank you for the work that you do within the ag industry and also just for helping make sure that counties grow smart and the work that you do specifically in Owyhee County. So we really appreciate your time and wish you the best in your county moving forward. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the conversation, and I enjoyed the conversation.
With that, we'll wrap up another episode of Dirt Road Discussions, and we'll see you down the road.